Hey everybody, Basilray, bright and early on a Saturday morning. Today we're going to take a look at the curve and the can from Inhaler, which I currently have set up here, pushing 12 watts through the old Kanger Pro tank that we looked at the other day. So the idea here is that this is a fully mechanical mod with an add-on to give you variable wattage via a DNA 12 up to 12 watts. So it's got a locking button here at the bottom. It takes an 18650, and the first thing you're going to notice about this is that this will double as a nightclub. This is one of the heaviest, sturdiest, most rugged mods that I've had in my hand to date. I mean, this probably weighs as much as 2 Pure Smoker Legacies. In terms of an empty Pro Vari with extended cap, you know, this weighs about 3 times here with the battery in it, at least what the Pro Vari weighs. You could easily use this to keep yourself safe in a hostage situation. So those of you in Boston right now, the aftermath, you may want to keep one of these handy. So I've got it on here. It's got this bottom button, which, you know, I like to activate with my pinky, and it does work really pretty well. So let's go down to the desktop here, and we'll pull it apart. We'll take a look at it. We'll do a little testing under load, and we'll see how she does. Alright, so here we are with the curve and the can. The big flaw here for me is the size of both of these. The size and the weight. They're really heavy, and I don't think I could ever carry this around and use it in this configuration out and about. It's way too massive. So here, if I stack a Pro Vari with extended cap next to it, the curve itself is a little bit bigger than that. So for an 18650 mod, it's real big to start off. But then you talk about adding the can to that, and I mean, you're talking just such a massive thing to carry around before you've even put any kind of atomizer or tank on it. So the can is just 510 threaded, as is the top cap on the curve, and they simply just thread together. But, you know, just look at the size comparison here. I mean, that alone is the size of essentially a Pro Vari with, you know, an XL Cardo tank. Now, if I want to add a Cardo tank here, I mean, it's just so big I can't even get it into a decent camera shot. So that, I think, is the ultimate negative here on the can and the curve setup. However, you know, we'll take a closer look. There's going to be people who may be interested in the curve from a mechanical standpoint, and there may be people who just, you know, for a sitting-at-home mod or like to collect unique things, this may be up your alley. So, again, real hefty device here. Certainly going to double as a baton or nightstick for you. It's got a well-cut battery vent here at the top. Now, I would think you might want this a little bit closer to the bottom, but everybody's going to vary in terms of how they want their battery safety and or slots applied. So the top cap here is, again, 510 threaded brass, and it's essentially one solid piece with the exception of this center post. But even this alone is a pretty hefty cap. I mean, you can hear it clunk down on my desk when I drop it. It's got some real heft to it. So the battery tube itself has kind of got a nice curve feel, so it feels pretty good in your hand. The switch is fully mechanical, and it's bottom firing. Now what you can do is, if I get this in here set up right, you can lock the switch here at the bottom and keep it from firing. And if I continue to twist this here, should come off, although I've been playing with it a bunch, so there we go. So the entire switch mechanism will come out, so it's completely serviceable by the user. When we look actually down in the tube here, you'll see it's recessed, so the battery can never come out the end of the tube. So the switch kind of has its own little housing and compartment, which I think is a nice touch. However, once you get it all taken apart, it essentially disassembles into 4 pieces. So you have kind of the locking beauty ring here, the actual plunger, the Phillips screw here that's making the contact. Some may be at odds with this right off the bat because it's not a brass contact, and the mechanical heads out there certainly are going to prefer to see a brass screw here, and you've got a small spring. So to reassemble, simply pop the plunger back into the end piece here, pop the screw on. I get the best mileage out of then screwing this portion back in. Get this screwed down nice and tight. Make sure you've got your plunger pressed in, and then you're going to want to grab Phillips head screwdriver and the screw, and just go ahead and slide that in. Of course, trying to do this away from my face is going to be a pain. Okay, and there we go. So I'm just going to hold the plunger in with my pinky here at the bottom, and go ahead and screw the button back together. There, and it's screwed down nice and tight. And we're ready to go. I mean, the button does have a nice springy throw to it. It will lock. So that's something you're going to find yourself needing to do. Simply the weight of this, when you put a battery in, and you set this down with any kind of tank, or especially if you're using the can, when you set all this up together, what you're going to find is that it's too heavy to keep the switch from firing. So whenever you set this down, I mean, the weight of the device is going to cause the mod to fire. So you're going to want to find yourself using this, especially if you were to put any sort of tank on here that might leak. You're going to need that. So if we take a look here, we'll see if this is going to work for us. Let me go ahead and pop on the ECD meter here. Whoop. Well, for now, I'm just going to pull my fancy case for it off. So here we've got the ECD on top here. And let's take a look at just some numbers. Now, again, there's nothing on the top here. So 4.17 freshly charged battery. No resistance because there's no coil here. So obviously no power either. So let's take and throw something on the top here. I'm just going to grab a Kanger Pro Tank that I've got a rebuilt coil on. Coil's been kind of dancing between 1.2, 1.4 ohms. Let's take a look. So here it is. 2.9 amps, 3.9 volts, 1.3 ohm resistance, 11.2 watts. That's not too bad for a 1.2 ohm coil here on a mechanical device, remember. We're talking completely mechanical. So this is really holding up, I would say, pretty well. You know, we're not seeing a significant voltage sag. And if I quickly pop in the numbers here into a calculator, you know, we are right at that 11 watts. You know, everything's looking to line up pretty well. We're talking about a 0.2 ohm drop in voltage based on what, you know, the starting capacity is here. So that's really not too bad. Let's take a look at what happens when we put on the can. And we'll give the can some testing here under load as well. So again, the can is utilizing a DNA 20. So this is going to give you true power regulation. Now, there's going to be some out there who are immediately looking at the can and saying, or the curve, saying, wow, that holds up pretty well under load. You know, why would I want the can? You may not. You know, the can isn't going to be for everybody between the extra size and weight and everything else. For whatever reason, my ECD meter, this is one thing I've noticed too about the can, is that the threading here is pretty finicky. So if we look, I'm struggling to even get the can, or the ECD meter, which is just a standard 510 threading, to thread on. So yeah, what I'm going to do is grab a conveniently located 510 to 510 adapter and see if I can get that threaded and then thread the ECD into there. There we go. So one thing that I think is a little bit of a bummer is that just the threads on the can itself are a bit finicky. All right, so now let's throw on our Kanger Pro Tank again. So now, I mean, this is about the longest mod combination that I think I've ever seen that doesn't employ a gooseneck. I mean, it's just so big and unwieldy. Now, certainly I wouldn't expect anyone to be carting this around town with the ECD meter on it. Let's take a look and see what the can is set at right now. And it's going to help if this all makes proper contact. Beautiful. What a deal. There we go. All right, so we've got 1.2 ohms of resistance. Right now we're pushing 9 watts, 2.5 amps, and 3.4 volts. So if we crank this up, and again, that's just simply turning this little knob, which is kind of really hard to get to and utilize if you got fat fingers. So now we're at 4 volts, 12 watts. So I really didn't turn this much. You've got a real short throw here on the adjustment. Let me see if I can ensure that I've got this turned all the way down. And I think it's not turning anymore, so this should be theoretically bottom end. Let's see what we've got. Yeah, 3.3 volts, 1.2 ohms, 8.7 watts, 3 amps. So there you have it. I mean, the curve and the can, I think the curve itself is a pretty nifty, little mechanical mod if you're so inclined. The can, I think, is pretty slick. I wish the adjustment knob worked a little bit better, was a little bit easier to adjust. And overall, I just wish the size of this wasn't so massive. There's just no way that I think the average person's going to carry this around. I mean, this, before you've even put anything on it, dwarfs the size of, something like even a GGTS with a full mode Odysseus on it. By the time you get something on it, it's really, really big. So let's go back up top for final thoughts and talk about pricing. So we're back up top. The curve, the can, they look nice together. I mean, it's a nice looking combination. I really wish we could have integrated the curve and can and had its own special top cap, but I get wanting to keep it universal so you can throw a can on any mod that you have that's 510 that's mechanical. The curve itself is a pretty decent little mechanical mod. It's not terribly huge. I mean, I think it's a little bit bigger than maybe some of us are going to want to see. Once you start adding the can, there's just no way I could ever take this out and about. I mean, this, I couldn't hardly pocket this. It's so big. By the time I've got any kind of tank mechanism or even an atomizer on top. The price point here is $135 for the curve, $70 for the can, so $205 for the combo that you may find to be a bit unwieldy to use. I don't think the prices are that terrible. However, I would like to see a package deal that drops the cost a little bit if you're buying both. In the end, I think you've got two separate, unique ideas billed as going together. But because of the size here, you're really limited in ever being able to effectively use these together. I haven't seen the lower end of the stated wattage out of this, but I've primarily been using it with some fairly low resistance coils. So 1.2 ohms off of a DNA 12. I don't know if you can truly get down to the lowest wattage. But the other problem is that this knob, I feel like I can never quite get it dialed all the way up or down very easily. So I kind of have to grip it with my nails, and I chew my nails, and I'm always tearing them on something when I'm messing around, popping batteries in and out of phones at work, tearing apart computers, whatever, I've got going on. So, if you take these two things and separate them, you've got two pretty cool, unique ideas. You add them together, and I think it's just an unwieldy setup here. $135 for the curve kind of puts it in the higher end of some of the fancy mechanical mods these days. $70 for the curve makes it, I think, an affordable add-on, but it's kind of getting to the high end. So I want to feel like the prices are not that far off here, but just for me, I probably wouldn't have gone out and paid full retail for these. I picked these up secondhand from a bud over on Mod Trader on Facebook, so I didn't pay the full price entry. I just hadn't seen anybody put this to camera, and I really wanted to see how this all played out and how it felt in my hand. So the performance, hard to argue with. I think, you know, as a mechanical, seems to be performing really pretty well. The can seems to work. It doesn't like your real low resistance coils, which you probably wouldn't run if you're running a regulated power source to begin with. However, just again, once you put these together, a bit too unwieldy for me. So I'll leave you with the parting vape. And we'll send you off to enjoy the rest of your Saturday. As always, hit me up on the forums if you guys have questions. Facebook.com/Basilray, Twitter.com/Basilray, or @Basilray. And, of course, there's always the Basil phone, 612-293-6405. Catch us live Monday nights on Vape Link. Myself, my good friends, Mr. Kozakon and Sensefield or Feel the Vapor. Monday nights, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I've downsized my curve setup. This is much, much more acceptable. Let's send you on your way. But before we can do that, I need to make sure that you guys know, I hope you take care, especially if you're out there in pressured terrorist situations as of late. There's been all sorts of random stuff happening across the U.S., happening across the world. So please stay safe out there and take care.
She doesn't know why.